You didn't make a mistake. You didn't fall out of alignment. And no, the universe isn't testing you. It's preparing you. I know what it feels like when everything seems to unravel at once, when the plans that once felt so certain begin to dissolve, when people you counted on drift quietly out of reach, when the structures you built start to collapse in slow motion. At first, you tell yourself it's just a phase. Then you start to question your alignment. And then, the panic sets in. But what if nothing's going wrong at all? What if what you're experiencing isn't collapse? It's realignment. What if what looks like delay is actually sacred recalibration? What if the version of you capable of receiving what you've asked for is finally beginning to emerge, and everything that can't exist in that new frequency is simply being moved aside? This is the part about manifestation that few ever talk about. When your vibration begins to shift even slightly, the quantum field immediately starts reorganizing itself to match your new state of being. And from the human perspective, that reorganization often looks like chaos. You feel as if you're moving backward. You feel as if your vision is slipping away. But what's actually slipping is the identity that no longer resonates with your next timeline. The confusion, the discomfort, the ache of uncertainty. These are not punishments. They're signs that the field is rearranging itself to align your external reality with the frequency you've been calling in. That's not misalignment. That's momentum. Yes, it hurts. The pain of releasing what once felt safe. The ache of trusting what you can't yet see. The grief of becoming someone new without fully knowing who that someone is. It's disorienting because you're not just letting go of outcomes. You're letting go of entire emotional blueprints. You're shedding the part of yourself that survived through control, the part that believed effort was the measure of worth, the part that mistook stillness for weakness, and that part doesn't leave quietly. It clings, it bargains, it resists, not because it's wrong, but because it's afraid. It was never built to thrive. It was built to protect, but you don't need protection and mine. You need trust. You're not stuck. You're suspended between identities, standing in the luminous threshold between who you were and who you came here to become. You're standing in the doorway between who you've always been and who you're becoming. And that threshold, this space of in-between, is uncomfortable. Precisely because it's unfamiliar. Your old coping mechanisms don't work here. Your old mindset can't cross this line. The universe knows this. The field knows this. So it waits patiently, intelligently for your energy to become coherent, not just emotionally, but vibrationally, because the field doesn't respond to your words, your plans, or even your desires. It responds to your frequency. And when that frequency is tangled with contradiction, when desperation hides behind affirmations, or control masquerades as strategy the field cannot deliver. That's why nothing seems to move when you're trying too hard, because trying is often resistance dressed as effort. You're not meant to push your way forward. You're meant to feel your way into alignment. Alignment doesn't come from perfect rituals or endless to-do lists. It arises when you become still enough to notice where you're leaking power, where you're doubting your own intuition, where you're outsourcing your peace to a moment that doesn't exist yet. That's where preparation truly begins, not on a vision board, but in the space between your thoughts, in the stillness beneath all striving, in the quiet inhale that whispers, even if I can't see it yet, I know something is shifting. What if this isn't delay at all? What if this is the precise moment your frequency is stabilizing into a new reality? What if this is the detox before embodiment, the pruning before the bloom? What if the universe isn't holding you back, but holding space for the version of you who can finally hold everything you've been asking for without collapsing under the weight of it? That isn't a test. That's trust in motion. The field doing what it does best, mirroring your readiness. So no, you're not being punished. You're being positioned. You're being softened in the places where fear once made you rigid. You're being emptied of the noise that kept you chasing what was never meant to stay. You're being stripped of every illusion that told you You weren't ready, because now you are. And yes, this stage can feel anything but magical. It's raw, it's lonely, it's uncertain. But this sacred discomfort, this holy pause between identities, is the threshold of transformation. It's the moment when your old story becomes too small, and your new one hasn't yet taken form. It's the pause before the leap, the silence before the shift, and it's right here, in this stillness, that your true power finally begins to rise. Because when the field senses that you're no longer trying to force your way into alignment, when it feels that you're finally willing to sit in the space it's creating for you, it responds, not out of obligation, but out of resonance. It begins to shape a new reality that mirrors your stillness, your truth, your coherence. So if things feel unstable right now, let them. If life feels slow, dense, or uncertain, trust it. You're not falling apart. You're entering the most sacred stage of the process, the becoming. And the field, conscious and intelligent as it is watching. It's listening. It's recalibrating to your next frequency. Something in you has already shifted, and now reality is simply catching up. Let's move forward together, because one of the greatest misconceptions in spirituality is the idea that the universe tests you to see if you're worthy, but the quantum field doesn't test. It responds. It doesn't measure your strength or evaluate your progress. It listens to your signal and mirrors it perfectly. When that signal changes, even slightly, everything built upon the old vibration begins to dissolve, not out of punishment, out of coherence. The field never asks, "Are you ready?" It hears your energy and says, "I understand. Let me reflect that." And that reflection isn't always instantaneous. Sometimes it looks like life becoming more chaotic before it becomes clear. Not because you're regressing, but because the old foundation is being dismantled to make room for something entirely new. Your external reality is always a delayed echo of your internal vibration. So when you shift emotionally, when you stop broadcasting from fear, scarcity, or unworthiness, the field doesn't punish you. It pauses. It recalibrates. And that pause, that temporary stillness, is what most people misinterpret as being tested. But let's be clear. You're not being tested. You're being upgraded. And every upgrade requires a clearing. Just as the body releases toxins during healing, your energy field must release the dense patterns that no longer resonate with your expanded frequency. Old habits, outdated relationships, limiting beliefs, and rigid identities begin to dissolve. Not because you failed, but because they no longer fit. And the space that opens between what's leaving and what's arriving, that's where most people panic. That's when fear whispers its old stories. Because the mind hates emptiness. It wants to fill the silence with explanations, deadlines, and blame. But the field, the infinite field, loves emptiness, because emptiness is pure potential. It's the 0 point of creation, the womb of every new timeline. It's where all possibilities begin, and where the next version of you is already taking form. Emptiness is not absence. It's pure signal. It's the space where creation begins, the 0 point where new realities collapse into form. This is quantum truth. Every time you emit a new vibration through emotion, awareness, or intention, you are transmitting instructions to the field. You're telling existence what you're ready to experience next. And when your external life doesn't yet match that new frequency, the field begins to rearrange itself accordingly. But before it can deliver, it must first dismantle what no longer belongs. The dismantling isn't destruction, it's alignment. You're not losing what's meant for you. You're losing what cannot accompany you into your next reality. And yes, that process can look like chaos, because everything you once used to define yourself, every attachment that once made you feel safe, is being questioned by your new vibration. This is why manifestation so often arrives after the storm, not before it. The storm clears the space. It shakes loose what you wouldn't have released on your own. It pulls you from old loops, familiar relationships, outdated jobs, stagnant cities, and expired timelines, not to punish, but to prepare, to purify your signal. Because when your signal is clear, the field has no resistance. It doesn't hesitate. It simply reflects. But until that coherence stabilizes inside you, until your being becomes quieter than your thoughts, the field waits, not from delay, but from it waits for your energy to stop flickering between doubt and trust. It waits for you to stop forcing, stop pretending, stop performing alignment. Because the quantum field doesn't collapse around what you say. It collapses around what you vibrate, and vibration never lies. So when things begin to fall apart, don't ask, why is this happening to me? Ask instead, what is this making space for? Don't interpret rejection. Interpret redirection. Don't resist the silence. Learn to listen through it, because the silence between realities is where timelines are rewritten. It's where the universe rearranges itself in response to your coherence. And if you can hold your center through that silence, if you can stay grounded while everything uncoils around you, the field has no choice but to meet you at your new frequency. Dr. Joe Dispenza reminds us that the quantum field is a mirror of our inner state. It doesn't judge. It doesn't choose. It simply reflects back the truth of your vibration. And when that vibration becomes stable, peaceful, coherent, reality reshapes itself to match. But the quantum field isn't a passive mirror. It's alive. It's aware. It senses your fear, your trust, your hesitation. It knows when you're pretending, and it knows when you've truly surrendered. When you no longer need the outcome to feel whole, that's when the outcome begins to take shape. When you stop reaching and start anchoring, reality bends to meet your stability. But anchoring requires presence. It requires stillness. It demands the courage to sit inside the in-between and whisper, even here, I trust. Because the moment you stop trying to fix, prove, or control your reality, your frequency becomes still, and in stillness, there is clarity, and in clarity, there is access. And with that access, manifestation stops being something you chase. It becomes something you simply allow. So no, you're not failing because things are falling away. You're succeeding at a level deeper than your mind can measure. You're becoming resonant with the life you once had to imagine. You're stepping into the version of yourself who no longer asks, is it working? Because you can already feel it working in your body. That's the moment the field takes you seriously. That's when it stops responding to your rituals and starts responding to your being. And that being, your true self, doesn't force the future. It invites it. Let that truth settle into your cells. Now, let's go deeper. There's a space between letting go and receiving. A quiet, eerie stillness where nothing seems to move. You've done the work. You've felt the shift. You've surrendered. And then suddenly, there's silence. No signs. No confirmations. Just emptiness. But that emptiness, mistake. It isn't a delay. It's the recalibration zone, the quantum womb, where new timelines are being rewritten, not through what you do, but through who you're becoming. Most people misinterpret this phase as failure. They panic. They dig up their progress to check if it's growing. They hustle harder, trying to earn what was already aligning. But the field doesn't reward impatience. It responds only to coherence, and coherence requires stillness. That's why this invisible, unglamorous stretch, this quiet, awkward pause between worlds is the most vital part of transformation. It reveals whether you trust your frequency or merely perform it. You're not stuck. You're suspended, floating between timelines. The old one is fading. You can feel it loosening its grip. The new one isn't visible yet, but you can sense its pull. And in this suspension, in this sacred stillness, the next version of you is gathering strength, waiting to be born, but something within you already knows the truth. This space is sacred. This is where the subconscious rewrites itself. This is where old emotional signatures dissolve. This is where your entire system stabilizes into a new identity, long before reality mirrors it back. And yes, it feels strange. It feels like being no one, like standing in the void, unsure what to do next. That's because your identity is shifting. You're no longer who you were, yet not fully who you're becoming. This right here is what spiritual maturity actually feels like. Not fireworks or grand epiphanies, but quiet integration, not sudden breakthroughs, but steady consistency. The field is watching not with eyes, but with resonance. It's listening to the quality of your silence. It's sensing the shape of your vibration when you're not trying to perform alignment. Because when you finally stop pushing, your true frequency emerges, and that's the one that creates worlds. Neville Goddard called this state the Sabbath, the sacred rest between assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled and witnessing it take form. He said, if you persist in the assumption, it will harden into fact. But persistence isn't effort. It's vibrational stability. It's the quiet confidence that comes when you stop needing proof and instead become the proof. When you stop looking outward for validation, because your body already knows the truth. So if you feel like nothing is happening good, that means something deeper. The surface is quiet, because the foundation is being rebuilt. Your system is learning how to hold the new frequency without collapsing back into the old. Your timeline is recalculating in real time, and your only job right now is to stay coherent. But coherence doesn't mean perfection. It means honesty. Can you stay present without running from the discomfort? Can you hold the vibration of trust without visible proof? Can you let the new timeline form around your being instead of chasing it through force? This is the quantum pause, the moment when the field is waiting, not withholding. It's listening for the consistency of your signal before collapsing it into form. And that consistency isn't measured in intensity. It's measured in ease, in peace, in how softly you hold your vision, in how little you need to grip it. Because the tighter you grasp, the louder you tell the field, I don't believe it's real. And the field, always honest, reflects that belief in your words. So let go gently. Trust the silence. It's not emptiness. It's the sound of reality rearranging itself to match your becoming. So stop grasping, start anchoring, start living the vibration of already. Walk as if it's done not to prove anything to the field, but to remind yourself who you are. Because when your nervous system finally believes it's safe to receive, the field responds instantly. This is where the breakthrough lives, not in the doing, but in the being, not in the outcome, but in your readiness to hold it. And that readiness isn't proven through rituals or mantras. It's revealed through emotional neutrality, the deep peace that comes when the outcome no longer defines your worth. That's the moment it arrives, when joy isn't postponed until something happens, but accessed now. The manifestation locks in. When you stop bracing for disappointment and start moving from alignment, that's when the new timeline stabilizes. The quantum isn't slow. You're simply stabilizing. It's waiting for the exact precision of your frequency to match what you've asked for. So let it take the time it needs. Let the unseen rearrange itself on your behalf. Let silence speak louder than your thoughts. Let the discomfort become your training ground for trust. Because trust collapses reality faster than any technique ever could. Jitter. In the next section, we'll explore how to navigate this recalibration phase without self-sabotage, how to stop interpreting discomfort as failure, and begin recognizing it as a symptom of deep alignment. Are you ready to change the way you move through the unknown? Then let's continue. By now, you've probably noticed the pattern. The more you try to force change, the more resistance you meet, the harder you chase the next step, the further it seems to drift. That's not failure. That's feedback. The quantum field doesn't respond to pressure. It moves in harmony with resonance. And resonance doesn't come from urgency. It comes from surrender. But surrender has been misunderstood. It's not giving up. It's not passivity. It's the radical choice to value coherence over control, to stop wrestling with the flow and instead become it. It's choosing, moment by moment, to trust the timeline your soul has already designed, even when your mind can't yet comprehend it. That's real power, and that power is what stabilizes your field. So, how do you cooperate with the quantum when everything feels out of sync? First, stop interpreting discomfort as danger. Most of what you call fear is actually just unfamiliarity. You're not afraid because something's wrong. You're afraid because something's different, because you've begun emitting a new frequency, and your nervous system is still learning how to match it. That isn't sabotage. That's integration. Let it unfold. Second, stop asking, how do I fix this? Instead, ask, what part of me is still resisting this? Because trying to fix what the field is already rearranging only adds static to your signal. The more you interfere, the longer the recalibration takes. But when you breathe, soften, and release, you become magnetic. Not because you're doing more, but because you're finally still enough to receive. As Abraham Hicks reminds us, you can't be in receiving mode and resistant mode at the same time. It's not about intensity. It's about allowing. And allowing isn't passive. It's one of the most deliberate states you can embody. It's the conscious decision to trust that alignment is working, even when your senses can't yet see the evidence. Trust isn't a feeling you wait to have. It's a frequency you choose, especially in the moments that feel most uncertain. Because that's when the universe listens the closest, not when you perform trust, but when you become it. So what does that look like in practice? It looks like waking up and not asking, what's missing, but what am I radiating? It looks like observing your thoughts without believing every one of them. It looks like noticing the tightness in your chest and choosing to soften instead of spiral. It looks like holding the same peaceful energy whether the manifestation has arrived or not. Because the field isn't just interested in giving you what you want. It wants to witness who you become while waiting. That's the preparation. That's the training, not punishment precision. Your nervous system is the antenna through which the universe receives your signal. The clearer the signal, the clearer the response. That's why things sometimes fall apart before they fall into place. Because you can't manifest from a state of inner conflict. The field won't collapse a new reality around an old vibration. It's waiting for the moment your energy stops battling itself and finally begins to harmonize with the frequency of everything you've asked for. The field will wait patiently, faithfully, until you stop vibrating from memory and start vibrating from now. That's the key, because it's only in the now that your future is chosen, shaped, and magnetized into form. So here's a simple shift you can make today. Instead of asking for proof that it's working, become the proof. Instead of searching for signs that you're aligned, let your alignment become the sign. Instead of waiting to feel safe once the outcome appears, become the space where safety already exists. You don't need more steps. You need more stillness. You don't need another affirmation. You need permission to feel how far you've already come. You don't need to do more. You need to stop resisting who you're becoming, because who you're becoming is already aligned. You're simply learning how to meet that version of yourself in the field, without fear, without hesitation. Take a breath. Let this land. If your path feels unfamiliar, it's because you're walking at the edge of the old map. And that's exactly where all new realities begin. If the silence feels loud, good. It means the field is listening. And if these words resonate, if they touch the quiet part of you that's been holding on through the uncertainty, then mark this moment with intention. In the comments, write, I trust the process, not because it's perfect, but because it's precise, not because it's easy, but because it's evolution. This isn't punishment. It's preparation. And in the next section, We'll close this journey not with new answers, but with an ancient remembrance. You are not here to merely survive your life. You are here to embody the frequency you were born to carry, the one the universe has been preparing you to hold all along. Let's finish this together, because by now, something inside you has already shifted. Not because you learned something new, but because you remembered something eternal. You are not being tested. You are being transformed. You're not being tested. You're being trusted. The universe isn't standing back, waiting to see if you'll fail. It's actively rearranging your reality to support who you're becoming. And sometimes, that rearrangement feels like resistance, like silence, like pain. But it's not punishment. It's preparation. You asked for alignment, and now the field is clearing away everything that can't sustain it. That's why it hurts. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you're shedding everything that was never truly you. The expectations, the masks, the timelines you outgrew but still tried to carry. The field is precise. It only responds to truth. And when your truth becomes louder than your fear, the field moves. What you've been feeling isn't failure. It's activation. It's the deep, quiet emergence of coherence within you, the stabilizing of your nervous system into a new identity, the gentle calibration to a version of you that no longer needs to perform, only to be. That's the shift. That's the preparation, because receiving has never been about deserving. It's always been about readiness. The universe already wants to give you everything you've asked for. It's simply waiting for your field to become clear enough to let it in. And that clarity doesn't live in your words or your affirmations. It lives in your frequency. It's in your emotional signature. It's in your willingness to soften instead of control, to trust instead of chase, to anchor instead of prove. It's no longer about asking, when will it happen? It's about living from the energy that quietly says it already is. Because when that belief becomes embodied, when your nervous system truly feels it, timelines collapse faster than any ritual could ever command. You were never meant to force your reality. You were meant to feel it. You were never meant to hustle for alignment. You were meant to remember it. You're not here to earn your manifestations. You're here to resonate with them. And sometimes that resonance takes time. Sometimes it requires falling apart. Sometimes it means sitting in silence longer than you thought you could bear. But that silence isn't empty. It's the sound of your future aligning. It's the quiet hum of your next reality forming itself around the truth you've finally decided to live. But on the other side of that stillness lies something extraordinary. Stability. Not the fleeting emotional highs that leave you drained, but a deep, grounded, magnetic alignment. The kind of alignment that doesn't crave attention, because it already knows. The kind of coherence that doesn't seek proof, because it has already become the evidence. And when you become the evidence, reality bends, the field responds, life begins to move again. Not because you pushed, but because you finally stopped. You made space. You breathed. You stayed. You softened. You surrendered without giving up. You trusted. And that trust became your signal, a frequency so clear the universe couldn't ignore it, so powerful that timelines had no choice but to shift, so aligned that what once felt distant became inevitable. That's what's happening now, not someday, not when you're more ready, now. So if this message touched the part of you that's been quietly holding on, if you felt even a flicker of clarity, peace, or remembering, let this be your sign to keep going. Let this be the moment you stop chasing and start receiving. Let this be the moment you stop doing more and start trusting deeper. Let this be the moment you anchor into the quiet knowing. I'm not lost. I'm being aligned. And if this space, this frequency felt like home to you, if it reminded you of who you really are, beneath the noise, then stay connected, because this isn't just a message, it's a mirror. I hope these words found you exactly when you needed them. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. This is your season of preparation, the sacred stillness before everything aligns, the breath before the bloom, the quiet moment where your next reality is already forming.